The European Union says it will hit Chinese electric cars with import taxes as high as 38.1% from next month, unless the issue can be resolved through dialogue. Now let's stay with that story, and here to explain the implications of the move further is Anthony Sassine, Senior Investment Strategist and Head of Middle East and North Africa at KraneShares. Anthony, welcome. Now, if you look just a few months back, EU officials were visiting China. They were talking about de-risking relations. And today, where are we? We are seeing a potential trade war brewing. Why such a disconnect between actions and words?
Yeah, we're sure moving in the wrong direction globally, led by the US. And, now we're seeing the EU join. I think there are multiple issues here, related to this decision today. One of them is European politics moving more conservative and also worried about the auto industry. The second one, I think the war with Russia is definitely playing a role here where the EU and the US finding more reasons to put more pressure on China so they can back down. And then also the relations between EU and the US, where European Union is trying to be in line with the US. And that's leading to really disappointing decisions here. In my opinion, putting tariffs never worked in the past, and that's going to delay a lot of the climate policies, especially in Europe, which are much more advanced than in the US.
Is your opinion also that the decision will affect more than just Chinese and European EV makers, potentially also other Chinese exporters to the EU? And who might be the biggest loser?
Well, definitely. I mean, we haven't seen any more news about trade. Mostly it's focused on renewable energy and technology. The auto industry has been at the forefront. We're seeing more stuff being rolled out on technology as well. Today, the U.S. kind of announced or thinking about putting more restrictions on some of the chips to China. So we could see more stuff happen. But the EU is always careful when dealing with China. They are the biggest trade partner. Many of the EU companies, especially in the auto industry, derive 30-40% of the revenues from China. The CEOs are definitely against these type of decisions. It's going to be a little bit harder for the EU to put more restrictions on China, but never say never.
Well, as you mentioned, the EU is indeed the largest buyer of these EVs. And in fact, China's EV sector has expanded substantially since the pandemic. Given where we are, what is the outlook then for Chinese EV makers?
Yeah, no, I mean, these tariffs, they're still going to give an advantage for the Chinese EV makers. BYD, which is the big one, was hit with a 17%, I believe, tariff. I haven't seen the numbers yet for NIO and Xpeng. SAIC is a lot less involved in the EV story, especially in Europe, which had the highest tariffs, 38%. I mean, BMW, if they produce cars in China and bring them back, they're going to have to be subject to tariffs. But Chinese companies are way ahead of the curve here. I think there are reports that shows that Chinese companies are at least have a 25 to 30% price advantage just due to their manufacturing, due to their advancement, in research and development. So, I think we're gonna see more inflation in the auto industry in Europe. Chinese companies can pass this to the consumer, and also Chinese companies are setting up in Europe different factories between Hungary, Poland, and different countries. That could also alleviate some of the issues from the European side and some of the tariffs. I don't think the impact is going to be massive, but definitely the headlines, are not very pleasant.
No, not at all. And since Beijing has a kind of buffer, as you've mentioned, 30% buffer built in, what do you think the EU's reactions would be should it retaliate? What kind of tools does it have at its disposal?
Well, China has been very pragmatic in terms of, responding to this, especially with the U.S. I think they're going to use the same way in Europe. I think a lot of the responses have come in different industries. not necessarily tick for tack, mostly coming in aviation and agriculture in different ways, also in politics too, right? Like the day the U.S. announced tariffs, and the next day China announced that President Putin is going to be, invited to China for a summit. So there are multiple ways that the U.S., Europe, and the U.S. And China can play this, and it can come in different industries and different politics. But that's only what's going to do is going to increase tensions globally, it could lead to something that no one wants to see happen.
Yeah, I appreciate your thoughts on that, Anthony Sassine. Thank you so much. Anthony is the Senior Investment Strategist and Head of Middle East and North Africa at KraneShares.